These aren't characters from a crime thriller. They're real women serving real time in federal prison. From billion-dollar frauds to unthinkable violence, these 25 cases will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about female criminals. Let's begin. Case 1. Nicole Devilbiss. Nicole Devilbiss walked into a Jacksonville courtroom and faced a crime so disturbing that even seasoned investigators struggled to comprehend it. This 35-year-old woman didn't traffic drugs or steal money. She ran a Telegram group dedicated to torturing monkeys, and she made people pay to watch. Between June 2022 and May 2023, Devilbiss served as administrator of an online network that funded the creation of Animal Crush videos. She coordinated payments, ranging from $100 to $230 per video, collecting funds from subscribers who wanted to see monkeys suffer. When Homeland Security raided her Old Kings Road home on October 31, 2023, they found her electronic devices filled with torture videos and a handwritten journal detailing plans to acquire a local monkey for abuse. During interviews, Devilbiss initially claimed she joined these groups to help stop the torture. That lie crumbled quickly. She admitted deriving relief from watching the videos, referring to the animals as rats, and actively sharing content across multiple platforms. Financial records confirmed dozens of transactions flowing from her accounts to video producers overseas. On June 18, 2024, U.S. District Judge Wendy Berger sentenced her to 4 years and 3 months in federal prison under the Animal Crush Video Prohibition Act. The case represented a coordinated effort by multiple agencies to dismantle a network that federal prosecutors called deeply disturbing and entirely illegal. Case 2. Rebecca Diane Merkel. They called her residence the Walmart of drugs. That nickname alone should tell you everything about Rebecca Diane Merkel's operation in Longview, Texas. At 43, Merkel wasn't running a corner hustle. She was operating a full-scale distribution center from her William Street home. Methamphetamine, fentanyl-laced pills, stolen goods, firearms. If it was illegal, Merkel probably had it in stock. Individual users came. Street-level dealers came. Customers traveled from multiple counties because everyone knew where to go. But on March 29, 2023, Merkel sold pills that would end a life. The next day, law enforcement found a body in a vehicle in remote Rusk County. The scene had been staged by her co-defendants, but the autopsy didn't lie. Fentanyl overdose. Federal authorities traced those pills directly back to Merkel's operation. When officers pulled her over on May 10, 2023, they found a firearm, meth, and more fentanyl pills. During questioning, Merkel admitted everything. She'd been selling controlled substances from her home, including during the period when those fatal pills were distributed. 6 co-defendants went down with her, receiving sentences ranging from 3 to nearly 16 years. But Merkel, as the ringleader, faced the harshest penalty. In November 2024, the United States Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Texas secured a 20-year federal sentence. 20 years to think about the life her pills destroyed. Case 3. Gretchen Buselli. Gretchen Buselli had a problem, her estranged husband. And for 3 months in 2021, this 48-year-old Tallahassee woman tried to solve that problem by hiring someone to kill him. Between June 17th and September 16th, Buselli used every communication tool available. U.S. mail, phone calls, text messages, encrypted apps, to arrange a murder. She claimed her husband was harming their young daughter. Allegations that child welfare officials investigated and determined were completely unfounded. When an acquaintance refused to carry out the killing and instead reported her to police, the FBI stepped in with an undercover agent posing as a hitman. Buselli didn't hesitate. She provided detailed information: her husband's appearance, his daily routines, his exact whereabouts. She negotiated payment, $5,000 up front, more after the job was finished. On the agreed date, federal agents watched her deliver the cash at Cascades Park Amphitheater in Tallahassee. Surveillance cameras caught everything, including Buselli discarding the clothing she wore during the drop-off. A move prosecutors said showed clear consciousness of guilt. When the undercover agent told her the murder was complete, Buselli expressed gratitude. Then came the interrogation. She denied everything. Denied the plot. Denied wanting her husband dead. Denied the meetings, the payments, the planning. Those lies became additional charges. On sentencing day, federal officials made it clear this wasn't a moment of rage or desperation. This was 3 months of calculated planning to commit murder. 15 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Case 4, Margaret E. Shafe, February 2024 at Fort Riley Military Installation. 2 little girls, one 9 years old, one just 11 months, would witness something no child should ever see. Their mother, 31-year-old Margaret Shafe, had reached a breaking point. Minutes before the shooting, she told her husband, Army soldier Greg Shafe, "I am going to make him feel my pain, and he just laughs at me." 20 minutes later, she grabbed his firearm, climbed to the second floor of their home, and waited. When Greg reached the landing, holding their baby daughter in his arms, Margaret fired. The bullet struck him in the face. He collapsed into the bathroom, where their 9-year-old stepdaughter stood brushing her hair. She screamed, hid in the shower, then grabbed her baby sister and called for help. Emergency services arrived quickly. Both children were physically unharmed, but the psychological damage was immeasurable. Margaret Shafe then did something that still haunts investigators. She drove off base while intoxicated with both daughters in the car. Hours later, authorities found her. During detention, she bragged about the killing and held a mock birthday party for her dead husband, complete with paper confetti. The trial revealed years of abuse, but Margaret was the abuser. She belittled Greg, controlled him, threatened to take the children, all while battling alcohol addiction. She even fabricated allegations of inappropriate behavior to justify the murder. On February 14, 2025, a federal jury convicted her of second-degree murder. The 9-year-old's testimony sealed the case. On sentencing day, prosecutors emphasized one fact: she murdered her husband while holding their baby with their other daughter steps away. To her 93 months in federal prison, roughly 24 years, no parole ever. Case 5. Kaden Elizabeth Gilbert, tribal land, federal jurisdiction. A single knife wound that severed a femoral artery and ended a life in minutes. Kaden Elizabeth Gilbert was 22 years old when she walked into Nagan-Bomasee's Mount Pleasant, Michigan home on the Isabella Indian Reservation in November 2020. What happened inside that residence would place Gilbert's case under federal law and lead to one of the most emotionally charged sentencings in Eastern District of Michigan history. Gilbert stabbed Bomasee in the thigh. The blade cut through the femoral artery, causing catastrophic blood loss. Despite desperate efforts to save her, Bomasee died from the injury. Because the crime occurred on tribal land and the victim was Native American while Gilbert was not, The FBI joined the investigation immediately. Federal prosecutors concluded the stabbing was deliberate, carried out with malice aforethought. They had enough evidence for first-degree premeditated murder charges, which could have meant life in prison or worse. But a plea agreement changed everything. In November 2021, Gilbert pleaded guilty to second-degree murder, admitting her actions were intentional and malicious. The sentencing hearing on April 14, 2022, brought the weight of the crime into sharp focus. Bamassi's mother stood before U.S. District Judge Thomas Ludington and described her daughter's life, her dreams, the night she fought to survive, and the moment that fight ended. Members of the Anishinaabe community filled the courtroom, wearing red shirts and ribbon skirts, a powerful visual reminder that this case affected an entire community. Judge Ludington sentenced Gilbert to 250 months, more than 20 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. The message was clear: violence on tribal land will face the full force of federal law. Case 6. Chelsea Perkins, former Coast Guard veteran, cold, calculated killer. Chelsea Perkins drove over 300 miles from Alexandria, Virginia to Ohio in March 2021 with one purpose: murder. Her target was Matthew Dunmere, a 31-year-old aspiring musician she'd reconnected with online. Dunmere told co-workers he was meeting a woman who just arrived in the area. He had no idea Perkins had brought a firearm from Virginia. He had no idea the meeting would be his last day alive. After picking him up, Perkins rented an Airbnb where they spent the night. The next morning, March 6th, she drove him to Cuyahoga Valley National Park. They hiked past marked trails, crossed ravines, moved deep into wooded areas far from witnesses. Then Perkins pulled out her gun and shot Dunmere once in the back of the head, killing him instantly. She left his body in the woods and drove away. 3 days later, hikers found him. Because the murder occurred on federal land, federal agents took over. GPS data placed Perkins at the scene. Phone records confirmed her communications with Dunmere. Surveillance footage tracked her movements. When agents searched her Virginia home, they found 3 9mm pistols. One was inside a purse containing her photo ID. DNA testing confirmed it was hers. Ballistics linked that weapon to the bullet that killed Dunmere. Investigators also found a deleted note on her phone, a fake goodbye message written in Dunmere's voice, created around the time his body was discovered. After the murder, Perkins drove to Michigan and got a tattoo of a noose on her forearm before returning to Virginia. During questioning, she claimed Dunmere had assaulted her in 2017, an allegation investigated years earlier, but never prosecuted due to insufficient evidence. Federal prosecutors made it clear, whatever happened in the past, this murder was intentional and unlawful. On September 9, 2025, U.S. District Judge Solomon Oliver Jr. sentenced Chelsea Perkins to 270 months, 22 and a half years in federal prison. Case 7. Brooke Danielle Beckley. She was 21 years old and already running a multi-county methamphetamine empire. Brooke Danielle Beckley operated across Greene, Dallas, Webster, and Christian counties in Missouri, moving significant quantities of meth and managing financial obligations that would make legitimate businesses nervous. Then came April 6, 2016. Law enforcement raided Beckley's hotel room and seized 1.9 kilograms of methamphetamine, multiple firearms, ammunition, a drug ledger, and cash. That seizure created a $44,000 debt to her suppliers, including Oscar Martinez Gaxiola, a Mexican national. Most people would panic. Beckley started planning murder. Text messages between Beckley and co-conspirator Giovanni Mendeville Balderrama discussed eliminating Martinez Gaxiola to cancel the debt and remove a perceived threat. This wasn't heat-of-the-moment rage. This was calculated planning. Beckley recruited Anthony Edward Donovan, offering payment for his participation. Donovan brought in Nathaniel Austin Lee, who provided his rural Webster County property as the kill site. On April 24, 2016, the group practiced shooting at that same property, a rehearsal that became damning evidence of premeditation. The next day, April 25th, Martinez Gaxiola was lured there under the belief Beckley would repay the debt. When he arrived, they ambushed him. Dozens of rounds were fired. Martinez Gaxiola suffered critical injuries and died before he could be transported for medical care. Neighbors reported the gunfire. Law enforcement responded fast. The group tried to conceal the body and flee, but by day's end, all co-conspirators were in custody. In June 2017, Beckley pleaded guilty to conspiracy to distribute methamphetamine and using a firearm in furtherance of drug trafficking resulting in murder. On February 26, 2018, U.S. District Judge Roseanne Ketchmark delivered the sentence: 40 years in federal prison. No parole, ever. Case 8, Sheila Marie Ritz, a late-night lobster fishing trip, a boat ride into the Pacific Ocean, a gunshot, a man left to drown in dark waters. Sheila Marie Ritz owned a boat docked at Dana Point Harbor, California. In October 2019, she and Hong Xuan Lai devised a plan to confront Tree James Dow, who owed Lai money. They presented it as something harmless, fishing under the stars. Dow believed them. On October 15, 2019, just before midnight, all three boarded Ritz's boat. She piloted it into the Pacific, placing them within special maritime and territorial jurisdiction, federal waters. Once offshore, Lai shot Dow. Wounded and disoriented, Dow fell overboard. Instead of helping him, Ritz and Lai turned the boat around and headed back to shore, leaving Dow to die in the ocean. His body was recovered the next day, floating miles northwest of Oceanside. The San Diego County Medical Examiner's autopsy revealed gunshot wounds and blunt force trauma before drowning. Ruling: homicide. FBI and Coast Guard investigators focused on Ritz's boat, her movements, her relationship with Dow and Lai. When questioned in December 2019, Ritz lied. She claimed she'd never met Dow before that night. Evidence proved otherwise. She and Dow had traveled to Las Vegas together just 11 days before the murder. These weren't minor inconsistencies. They became a separate federal charge, making false statements to investigators. The trial lasted 12 days. In April 2022, the jury convicted Ritz of second-degree murder within maritime jurisdiction and obstruction of justice. At sentencing on April 17, 2023, U.S. District Judge David Carter described her conduct as horrific and horrendous. Prosecutors detailed the devastation: a grieving mother, a widow, siblings, 2 young children without their father. They also revealed that after the murder, Ritz helped Lai track Dow's widow using GPS devices, proof of her complete lack of remorse. 262 months in federal prison, 21 years and 10 months. Her co-defendant, Hong Xuan Lai, faces mandatory life in federal prison for first-degree murder. Case 9, Heather Lois Mack, the suitcase murder in Bali. Blood leaking from luggage at a luxury hotel. A mother's body stuffed. Inside, abandoned in a taxi. Heather Lois Mack was 18 years old when she helped murder her mother and sparked an international legal saga that wouldn't end for nearly a decade. Heather grew up in Chicago, daughter of jazz composer James Mack and socialite Sheila Von Wees Mack. By adolescence, the mother-daughter relationship had turned toxic. Police were called to their Illinois home dozens of times for domestic disputes involving theft, violence, and threats. Heather began dating Tommy Schaefer, a relationship her mother vehemently opposed. When Heather became pregnant, tensions exploded. In August 2014, Sheila booked a trip to Bali, taking Heather with her. They checked into the St. Regis Hotel in Nusa Dua. What Sheila didn't know, Heather had secretly used her credit card to fly Schaefer to Bali too. Surveillance footage showed Sheila arguing with Schaefer inside the hotel shortly before the murder. On August 7, 2014, Sheila was struck repeatedly inside the hotel room, dying from blunt force trauma. Then came the cover-up. Heather and Schaefer stuffed Sheila's body into a suitcase and tried removing it from the hotel in a taxi. Blood leaked from the luggage. Hotel staff noticed and directed the driver to police. Indonesian authorities opened the suitcase and found the body. Heather and Schaefer were arrested at a nearby motel. Indonesian courts convicted both of premeditated murder. Heather received 10 years, citing her pregnancy as a mitigating factor. Schaefer got 18. After serving 7 years, Heather was released in October 2021 and immediately deported to the United States. Upon landing in Chicago, federal agents arrested her. U.S. prosecutors charged conspiracy to murder a U.S. national and obstruction of justice, arguing the planning occurred on American soil. In June 2023, Mack pleaded guilty to avoid trial. On January 18, 2024, a federal judge sentenced her to 26 years in prison. She's now at FCI Hazleton, West Virginia. Her projected release date extends into the mid-2040s. If these cases are shocking you as much as they shocked the courtrooms, drop a comment below telling us which case stunned you the most, and hit that like button. It helps more people discover these untold stories. Case 10. Aafia Siddiqui. This case sits at the explosive intersection of national security, geopolitics, and criminal justice. Aafia Siddiqui is serving an 86-year federal sentence, effectively a life sentence, in one of America's most controversial terrorism-related cases. Born March 2, 1972 in Karachi, Pakistan, Sadiki moved to the United States and built an impressive academic record. Biology degree from MIT, doctorate in neuroscience from Brandeis University. For years, her life seemed defined by education and family. Then came September 11th. Siddiqui's movements and associations drew FBI attention. By the early 2000s, she became the first woman listed on the Bureau's terrorism-related seeking information notice. In March 2003, she vanished with her children, disappearing for 5 years. In July 2008, Sadiki resurfaced in Ghazni, Afghanistan, detained by Afghan police. According to U.S. prosecutors, documents in her possession included handwritten notes describing attacks on American landmarks and instructions related to weapons and explosives. The most serious incident occurred during questioning at a police compound. Federal authorities alleged Siddiqui grabbed a rifle and fired at U.S. personnel. She was shot during the struggle, seriously injured, and transferred to American custody. Siddiqui was extradited to the United States and charged in federal court in New York. Notably, she wasn't convicted of terrorism-related crimes, but assault and attempted murder of U.S. officers. In February 2010, a federal jury found her guilty on all counts. The judge imposed an 86-year sentence, citing the seriousness of the offense and danger to government personnel. She's currently at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas. From the moment of conviction, Siddiqui's case became a global flashpoint. In Pakistan, she's viewed as a symbol of injustice. Protests demanding her release occur regularly. Pakistani political leaders across party lines have publicly demanded her repatriation. U.S. officials maintain the trial was fair and the sentence reflects the gravity of the crime. The debate continues today. Case 11. Stella Nickell. She didn't just murder her husband, she poisoned store shelves across Washington state, turning medicine cabinets into crime scenes and triggering nationwide panic. Stella Nickell changed how America views everyday medication forever. Born August 7, 1943 in Oregon, Stella's early life was marked by poverty and instability. By adulthood, she had convictions for fraud and forgery. In 1976, she married Bruce Nickell, a heavy equipment operator struggling with alcoholism. When Bruce sought sobriety, it reportedly created tension in the marriage. Stella worked as a security screener at Seattle-Tacoma International Airport and maintained a home aquarium, a hobby that would become critical evidence. On June 5, 1986, Bruce complained of a headache. According to Stella, he took extra-strength Excedrin capsules and collapsed within minutes. He was rushed to Harborview Medical Center, but couldn't be revived. His death was ruled natural, emphysema. Less than 1 week later, on June 11th, bank manager Sue Snow collapsed after taking Excedrin purchased at a local store. She died at Harborview too. During Snow's autopsy, the medical examiner detected bitter almonds, cyanide. Lab tests confirmed lethal levels. Investigators traced the poison to the Excedrin capsules themselves. 3 additional cyanide-laced capsules were found in the same bottle. Public fear exploded. Drug manufacturers initiated massive recalls. Washington state temporarily banned capsule medications. The case drew immediate comparisons to the unsolved 1982 Chicago Tylenol murders. Stella entered the investigation voluntarily, claiming her husband died after taking Excedrin from a bottle with the same lot number. Testing confirmed cyanide in Bruce's remains and in 2 bottles Stella provided. But suspicion centered on her. Out of only 5 contaminated bottles discovered nationwide, Stella possessed 2. Investigators uncovered multiple life insurance policies on Bruce, including an accidental death rider that significantly increased the payout. Forensic analysts found traces of green aquarium algicide mixed with the cyanide inside the capsules. Records showed Stella had purchased that exact algicide for her fish tank. Library records revealed she'd researched poisons extensively. Her fingerprints were on pages discussing cyanide. Then came the most damaging testimony. Stella's daughter, Cynthia Hamilton, testified her mother had previously attempted to poison Bruce and openly discussed murdering him for insurance money. In December 1987, a federal grand jury indicted Stella on 5 counts of product tampering, including 2 counts resulting in death. Prosecutors argued she poisoned her husband for financial gain, then deliberately placed tainted bottles on store shelves to disguise the murder as random. The jury agreed. In May 1988, Stella Nickell was convicted on all counts, becoming the first person sentenced under the Federal Anti-Tampering Act enacted after the Tylenol scare. She received 2 concurrent 90-year sentences. Over the decades, she filed multiple appeals, maintaining innocence until a 2022 compassionate release request, where she finally expressed remorse. That request was denied. As of late 2024, Stella Nickell remains incarcerated at FCI Hazleton, West Virginia. Her projected release date is March 7, 2043. She'll be 99 years old. Case 12, Angela Jane Johnson, Forest City, Iowa. A childhood marked by religious trauma and abuse. A relationship with a drug trafficker that led to the murders of 5 people, including 2 little girls. Angela Jane Johnson became the first woman sentenced to death by a federal jury since 1953, before that sentence was later commuted to life. Born January 17, 1964, Johnson endured a brutal childhood. She was raised by deeply religious grandparents who subjected her to extreme exorcism rituals, while her mother struggled with alcoholism and neglect. As a young woman, Johnson became involved with Dustin Honkin, a rising methamphetamine trafficker, and became pregnant with his child. Their relationship drew her into a string of murders tied to Honkin's drug empire. In 1993, Johnson became central to murders in Cerro Gordo County, Iowa. The victims, 2 former drug dealers, Greg Nicholson and Terry DeGius, along with Nicholson's girlfriend, Lori Duncan, and her 2 young daughters, 10-year-old Candace and 6-year-old Amber. Authorities determined Johnson helped facilitate these murders to protect Honkin's operation and prevent informants from testifying. Johnson's involvement showed calculated manipulation. She posed as a lost salesperson to access Nicholson's home. Using her relationship with DeGius, she secured his trust. Johnson procured the pistol for the murders and helped move victims to secluded locations. Prosecutors argued she was more than a passive accomplice. She was an active participant. After years of investigation, Johnson was arrested in July 2000. Her capture came after she provided a map and written notes to fellow inmate Robert McNeese, which led authorities to recover victims' remains. McNeese, serving life, secretly recorded Johnson's confessions and gave investigators information tying her directly to the murders. In June 2005, a federal jury condemned Johnson to death for her role in the murders. The jury highlighted her participation in children's deaths and her lack of remorse. Her defense emphasized manipulation by Honkin and traumatic upbringing, arguing she hadn't fully understood consequences. Nevertheless, the December 19, 2005 death sentence made her the first woman federally sentenced to death in over 50 years. However, in March 2012, U.S. District Judge Mark Bennett vacated Johnson's death sentence, citing her defense team's failure to present critical mitigating evidence regarding her mental state. Judge Bennett described the defense as alarmingly dysfunctional. Following years of legal review, Johnson was resentenced in December 2014 to life imprisonment without parole. She's currently at Federal Correctional Institution Aliceville in Alabama, under strict federal supervision. Case 13. Shannon Guess Richardson, former actress, mother of 6, terrorist. Shannon Guess Richardson mailed ricin-laced letters to the President of the United States, the Mayor of New York City, and the head of a gun control organization, then tried to frame her husband for the crime. Born August 31, 1977, Richardson had appeared in minor television roles on The Walking Dead: The Vampire Diaries and in the film The Blind Side. But in May 2013, she became nationally known for something far more sinister. Richardson was living in Texas, married to Nathan Richardson, when she mailed the poisoned letters. The crime triggered a federal emergency, drawing multiple intelligence and law enforcement agencies. Then Richardson made a move that deepened the severity. She contacted federal authorities and falsely accused her husband of being responsible. Investigators quickly determined her claims didn't add up. Evidence pointed back to Richardson. She was arrested June 7, 2013, in Mount Pleasant, Texas. A search of her new Boston residence uncovered traces of ricin, castor beans, and materials consistent with toxin production. Federal investigators used advanced mail tracking technology operated by the U.S. Postal Service to narrow the origin of the letters. A federal grand jury indicted Richardson on multiple charges, including threatening the president, mailing threatening communications, and possession of a biological toxin. Facing overwhelming evidence, Richardson entered a plea agreement. On December 10, 2013, she pleaded guilty to possessing a toxin for use as a weapon. Prosecutors dismissed remaining charges, including presidential threats. On July 16, 2014, Richardson was sentenced to 18 years in federal prison, 216 months. The court ordered her to pay more than $367,000 in restitution and imposed 5 years of supervised release. She was also required to undergo psychological treatment during and after incarceration. The sentence reflected the court's view that her actions posed a serious threat to public safety, regardless of whether the poison harmed anyone. Richardson is currently at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, a facility housing female federal inmates with medical and mental health needs. Her projected release date is November 18, 2028. Case 14, Gina Champion-Cain. From San Diego, power broker to federal inmate. Gina Champion-Cain orchestrated the largest Ponzi scheme in San Diego history and the largest female-run Ponzi scheme ever uncovered in the United States. Her fall from grace reshaped how large-scale financial fraud led by women is viewed. Born in 1965 in Port Huron, Michigan, Champion-Cain built an impressive academic resume. Double major in philosophy and political science from University of Michigan, MBA from University of San Diego, and a law degree from California Western School of Law. Her education signaled discipline, intelligence, ambition, qualities that helped her gain trust from investors, city leaders, and financial institutions. Champion-Cain's early career unfolded in real estate and asset management, focusing on redeveloping distressed properties. By the mid-1990s, she'd launched her own firm, involved in multi-million-dollar commercial and housing projects. Her portfolio expanded into hospitality, restaurants, vacation rentals, lifestyle brands. In San Diego, her name became synonymous with urban revitalization. Her influence peaked in the early 2000s. She explored running for San Diego mayor. In 2006, the city council proclaimed a day in her honor. To investors, she appeared untouchable, well-connected, legally trained, deeply embedded in the city's business ecosystem. Behind the scenes, federal investigators would later conclude her empire rested on deception. According to court records, between 2012 and 2019, Champion-Cain and co-conspirators raised more than $400 million from hundreds of investors. She claimed funds were being used for a liquor license lending program, promising high returns backed by licenses supposedly held in escrow. In reality, prosecutors said the program was largely fictional. Investor money was recycled to pay earlier investors, prop up failing businesses, and fund Champion-Cain's personal lifestyle. Luxury homes, cars, jewelry, premium sporting event seats, and a multi-million-dollar salary for herself. When scrutiny intensified in 2019, the scheme unraveled. The SEC and FBI launched parallel investigations. Evidence showed attempts to obstruct justice, shredding documents, deleting emails, hiding records. What had been framed as sophisticated entrepreneurship was exposed as deliberate, sustained financial fraud on a massive scale. In March 2021, Champion-Kaine was sentenced to 15 years in federal prison after being convicted of securities fraud, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice. The court ordered her to pay tens of millions in restitution to victims who'd entrusted her with retirement savings, business capital, life investments. The sentence marked one of the most significant federal punishments ever imposed on a woman for white-collar crime. Champion-Kaine is currently at federal prison camp Pekin in Illinois, a minimum security facility. Her projected release date is January 2033. Case 15. Elizabeth Ann Holmes, once celebrated in Silicon Valley, once valued at $9 billion, once called the youngest self-made female billionaire in the United States. Elizabeth Holmes is now serving more than 11 years in federal prison for one of the most high-profile fraud cases in modern American business history. Born February 3, 1984, in Washington, D.C., Holmes came from a family deeply connected to government and corporate America. From an early age, she showed intense drive and desire to build something extraordinary. While studying chemical engineering at Stanford, Holmes became convinced she could revolutionize blood testing using only tiny samples from a finger prick. In 2003, she dropped out of Stanford and founded Theranos, a company she claimed would change medicine forever. For years, Theranos thrived on belief. Investors poured in hundreds of millions. By 2014, the company was valued at about $9 billion. Holmes became a media sensation, appearing on magazine covers praised as a visionary. Powerful figures, former cabinet members, military leaders, joined Theranos' board, lending credibility and influence. To the public, Holmes represented innovation, confidence, the future of healthcare. Behind the scenes, reality was far different. Employees raised concerns about accuracy and reliability of Theranos' blood testing technology, but many said they were silenced or pushed out. In 2015, investigative reporting revealed the company's flagship devices didn't work as promised, and that Theranos often relied on traditional machines while claiming proprietary breakthroughs. As regulators and journalists dug deeper, the carefully constructed image unraveled. By 2018, the situation had escalated into a full federal case. Prosecutors alleged Holmes knowingly misled investors about Theranos technology capabilities and the company's financial health. A federal grand jury indicted her on multiple counts of wire fraud and conspiracy. Holmes maintained innocence, arguing she believed in the technology and was misled by others, including business partner and former romantic partner Ramesh Balwani. Her federal trial began in 2021 and quickly became one of the most closely watched courtroom battles in the country. Prosecutors presented evidence showing Holmes approved misleading demonstrations, exaggerated contracts, false financial projections. In January 2022, a jury convicted her of defrauding investors while acquitting her on charges related to patients. The verdict marked a dramatic fall for someone once held up as a symbol of American innovation. In November 2022, Holmes was sentenced to more than 11 years in federal prison and ordered to pay hundreds of millions in restitution. In May 2023, she reported to federal prison camp Bryan in Texas, a minimum security facility for women. Case 16. Ghislaine Maxwell, international socialite, daughter of a media tycoon, convicted sex trafficker. Ghislaine Maxwell is serving 20 years in federal prison for her central role in a trafficking operation linked to financier Jeffrey Epstein. Her case stands out not only for the crimes themselves, but for how long they allegedly remained hidden behind wealth and influence. Born December 25, 1961, in France, raised in Oxford, England, Maxwell was the youngest child of media tycoon Robert Maxwell. She was educated at elite schools before earning a degree from Balliol College, Oxford. By the late 1980s, she was already visible in London's high society, closely associated with her powerful father. After her father's death in 1991, she relocated to New York City, rebuilding her identity as a prominent socialite and forging deep connections within America's upper social and political spheres. In New York, Maxwell became closely linked to Jeffrey Epstein, a wealthy financier, later exposed as a serial offender involved in trafficking girls. Prosecutors argued Maxwell wasn't a passive companion, but an active participant who recruited, groomed, and managed victims for Epstein over a period spanning the mid-1990s. According to testimony and court records, Maxwell helped normalize abuse, maintained control over victims, and ensured Epstein's access to young girls across multiple locations in the United States and abroad. For years, allegations followed both Epstein and Maxwell, surfacing through civil lawsuits and investigative journalism. Multiple women accused Maxwell of targeting them as minors, gaining their trust, preparing them for exploitation. Despite mounting accusations, Maxwell continued living freely, often disappearing from public view when legal pressure increased. By the late 2010s, she was rarely photographed, her whereabouts frequently unknown. Everything changed in July 2020, when the FBI arrested Maxwell at a secluded property in New Hampshire. Federal prosecutors in the Southern District of New York charged her with multiple offenses, including conspiracy to traffic and transporting minors for illegal activity. She was denied bail after the court cited international ties, hidden finances, and history of evading legal accountability. Her federal trial began in November 2021 and quickly became one of the most closely watched proceedings in the country. Prosecutors presented testimony from victims describing a structured system of recruitment and grooming, where Maxwell played a hands-on role. The jury convicted her on 5 of 6 counts, finding she'd knowingly participated in trafficking and abuse of young girls. The verdict sent a clear message. Proximity to power wouldn't shield her from accountability. In June 2022, a federal judge sentenced Ghislaine Maxwell to 20 years in federal prison, emphasizing her punishment was based on her own actions, not merely her association with Epstein. The court highlighted her repeated involvement in exploitation and long-lasting harm inflicted on victims. Maxwell is currently incarcerated within the Federal Bureau of Prisons, with a projected release date in July 2037. Case 17, Priscilla Anne Ellis. Large-scale international fraud. Murder for hire plots. A total sentence of 125 years in federal prison. Priscilla Anne Ellis, now 51, was described by prosecutors as a rare defendant who will pose an acute danger to society for as long as she walks this earth. She's currently at Federal Medical Center Carswell in Fort Worth, Texas, and she'll die there. Ellis's first federal conviction stemmed from a massive money laundering and fraud scheme. On October 27, 2016, a federal jury found her guilty of conspiracy to commit international money laundering and conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud. The operation involved defrauding law firms, title companies, and individuals through counterfeit checks and fictitious online relationships, with funds laundered through shell companies and bank accounts controlled by Ellis and co-conspirators. On October 13, 2017, She was sentenced to 40 years in federal prison, ordered to pay over $9 million restitution, and to forfeit multiple assets, bank accounts, real estate, a luxury vehicle. But Ellis wasn't done committing crimes. While awaiting sentencing at Pinellas County Jail, she orchestrated a murder-for-hire plot targeting witnesses and the mother of a cooperating witness. She enlisted other inmates and directed her own daughter to deliver $18,000 in cash to an undercover FBI agent posing as a hitman, with $600 as a down payment. Court records revealed she planned executions so extreme the scheme included harming children if necessary and using a Colombian necktie as a killing method. Ellis was convicted of the murder-for-hire plot on March 9, 2017. On January 4, 2018, U.S. District Judge James Moody sentenced her to 65 years in federal prison to run consecutively to her prior 40-year sentence for fraud. Total, 105 years, ensuring Ellis would spend the remainder of her life behind bars. Throughout incarceration, Ellis has pursued multiple appeals through the U.S. Court of Appeals for the 11th Circuit, with filings in 2019, 2020, 2023, and 2024. As of January 2026, no final ruling has been issued on her most recent appeal. Her case remains active in the appellate process. Her earlier petition for transfer to a prison closer to family under the First Step Act was dismissed as moot after relocation to FMC Carswell. Case 18. Reta Phyllis Mays. At number 1 in this countdown is Reta Phyllis Mays, one of the most notorious female serial killers in United States history. Over an 11-month period from July 2017 to June 2018, Mays murdered at least 7 elderly military veterans by injecting them with lethal doses of insulin while working as a nursing assistant at the Lewis A. Johnson Veterans Medical Center in Clarksburg, West Virginia. Born June 16, 1975, Mays grew up in Reynoldsville, West Virginia, and served in the U.S. Army West Virginia National Guard, including deployments to Iraq and Kuwait. Before employment at the Veterans Medical Center, she worked as a corrections officer at North Central Regional Jail from 2005 to 2012. During that time, she was named in a lawsuit by an inmate alleging abuse, though the case was dismissed. Mays was also an active member of Monroe Chapel United Methodist Church, reflecting deep community ties prior to her crimes. Her criminal actions began when she was assigned overnight shifts in July 2017 on Ward 3A at the Veterans Medical Center. Patients began experiencing acute, unexplained drops in blood sugar. Many weren't insulin dependent. Over 11 months, hospital staff documented multiple hypoglycemic events and deaths, eventually connecting them to Mays' deliberate administration of insulin. One early victim, Archie Edgell, an 84-year-old Korean War veteran, suffered repeated severe drops in blood sugar and died after multiple insulin injections. An autopsy confirmed he'd been injected 4 times. Investigators launched an extensive 2-year inquiry after Mays' termination in June 2018. The investigation included over 300 interviews, exhumation of suspicious deaths, review of medical records, and forensic analysis of digital evidence, including internet searches and phone communications. Investigators noted Mays' fascination with female serial killers and her viewing of Netflix content related to insulin murders. Calls to her incarcerated husband revealed her expressing frustration and violent thoughts about patients. In July 2020, Mays was formally charged with murders of 8 patients, though charges were later reduced to 7 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of assault with intent to commit murder. On July 14, 2020, she pleaded guilty in U.S. District Court for the Northern District of West Virginia, admitting to all charges. During her plea, she wept openly and claimed her actions were motivated by stress and a desire to relieve suffering. Prosecutors emphasized the premeditated nature of her crimes. On May 11, 2021, Maize was sentenced by U.S. District Judge Thomas Klee to 7 consecutive life sentences plus 20 years without eligibility for parole. The judge described her as the worst kind of individual, invisible until it is too late, reflecting the calculated and undetected nature of her crimes. Maize was transferred in July 2021 to Federal Correctional Institution Aliceville in Alabama, where she remains today. If you made it this far, you're part of the Crime Lens community. Hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss our next deep dive into the darkest corners of the criminal justice system. Until next time, stay safe out there.